All right, today I thought we would make the dolls just a couple of donuts. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy these are to make. All right, so off camera, I rolled some balls of clay. This is just original Sculpey, like we use a lot on this channel because we don't need to be able to get details in this. So I've made 4 balls of clay. These 3 are all right around an inch in diameter, give or take a little bit. This one is pretty close to an 1.25 inches in diameter. So we're going to get them as round as you can, which I seem to be struggling with this morning. And then I'm just sitting on a piece of, this is just medium sandpaper. That's all it says is medium. I don't know what the grit count is. And I'm just kind of using my hand and I'm pressing down. I want to get kind of a flat-ish shape, like a disc. And I'm going to do that to all 3 of these smaller balls. And I'm using the palm of my hand. It's fine. If they don't go perfectly round, that's okay, because a lot of times donuts are not perfectly round. They do funny things when they're getting cooked. Now, I have the handle to the, this is the eyeshadow brush I use for chalk. It's got a nice, good diameter. I think this is probably, let's see how big is this diameter on this handle, just give you an idea. It's bigger than 1/4, 5/16 of an inch diameter, anywhere's in that range. You just need something with a nice round shape, with kind of a rounded end is good. Going down through the top on all 3 of them. Now, I'm going to roll them over, turn them over, and I'm going to do the same motion in the same hole because we want this to go all the way through. And there's I believe I've got a piece of cat hair in there. Awesome. All right, that brush can be put off to the side until I need it. Now I'm going to dip my finger into some cornstarch off camera. And I'm using that cornstarch to help me kind of smooth this out. I don't want any sharp edges around this hole. I want it to be nice and round. I want the edges to be nice and round. I want this to be pretty smooth. So I'm going to do one of these and then I'm going to turn off the camera. I'm going to get the other 2 of these shaped the way I want them, and then I'll come back and we'll work with this one and then we'll do some texturing. All right, these are all smoothed up the way I want them, so now I'm going to start working with this guy. So this is going to be usually my favorite thing in the donut store. Where I lived most of my life up until about 2 years ago, these were called maple bars. I've discovered looking online that they're called long johns some places. But so I'm going to put this onto here so it doesn't get quite so smooth. I don't want a super smooth bottom on this. Get it. And a kind of a rounded rectangle. You don't want to be cutting a rectangle slab, because you need those rounded sides and the rounded ends. There. Now, let's do some texturing, because donuts aren't smooth all the way around. I have a piece of aluminum foil that has been crumpled up really tightly, and it's got kind of a pointy end here. And I'm just going to go around what I like to refer to as the equator of our donut. And you see how it's opening up a really good texture? Once we get these colored with chalk, these are going to look really good. So, and try to move this around so it's not always like, if you've got a line, don't make it really consistent. So I'm going to do the same thing all the way around this guy. These aren't typically quite as tall, at least usually at the bakery I used to get them at. They weren't quite as tall. The reason I'm doing this week is because I was craving donuts, and we've had blizzard conditions or blizzard warnings most of the week. So I didn't really feel it was worth risking my life to go get a donut. So I'm making polymer clay donuts instead. They'll have to do until I can get out. I may have to make a beeline for the bakery next time I go to the grocery store and get a donut though. All right, I am going to go the rest of the way around here. I'm going to do the same thing on these, and then I'll come back and we'll put our chalk on. All right, all our donuts have texture, so now it's time to add some chalks to them to give them some color, make them look like they're cooked. So what I've got here, I have my yellow ochre and I have a reddish brown. I'm using slightly, they're the same colors, but they're slightly different from what I do sometimes because I just pulled out a different package of artist chalk today. I have several packages, and some of the ones I've been using lately are getting really worn down. In fact, I have multiple sets. I'm actually out of yellow ochre in 1 or 2 of my sets of chalk. So I'm going to have to get myself some new yellow ochre. Now I'm going over the whole donut with this, but I'm trying to not concentrate on that textured center area. Just if it gets there, it gets there. If it doesn't, that's fine too. You can have some spots there that don't have any. And I'm going to cover the whole donut, both sides of all of these with the yellow ochre before I go on to the next color. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera off rather than making you watch me do this for the next several minutes. I'll be back when these are coated in chalk. All right, now that those are all coated in the yellow ochre chalk, I'm taking another brush. Now this one that I used for the yellow ochre is a slightly larger and much softer brush. This brush is more of a typical eyeshadow brush. It's a little firmer, a little smaller, because we don't need to get as much of this on. And I do like holding them in my hand. I have found recently that when I chalk these on my tile, sometimes I end up with some of the chalk pooling underneath my project, and that's hard to blend. When I do them in my hand, I have less of a tendency to get those pooled areas. Also, I can support this better so I don't misshape it. Now, don't overdo this color, and don't get this down. Try to avoid that textured area as best you can. Come around the top and around the bottom, but try to avoid the very interior of the donut hole and around that textured area, because those areas would not get as deeply colored when the real donuts are being fried. One thing I recommend you do, and I wish I had a donut on hand, is to, have the real food in front of you or photos. Either one helps to get these right. It's nice to have the real thing because you can really look at it from all angles. But I'm having to do with just some inspiration pictures today. So I'll go ahead and do this one in my hand here in front of you, and then I'll turn the camera off and I will get the others chalked up with our reddish brown. Then these need to bake. We're going to bake these before we put our icing on. We're going to bake them at the recommended temperature for our clay I'm going to do a full 20 minutes because these are pretty thick and I want them to cure all the way through to the middle. So when these are baked and then cooled, I'll be back and we will add our icing to the tops. All right, our donuts have baked and they have cooled. I want them cooled completely before I start our next step. So now we're going to decorate the tops of our donuts. So I'm going to put these off to the side for a moment while I get my frosting or my icing ready. And what I have on this piece of aluminum foil, and you do want to mix this on a disposable surface. And I don't remember if I've done this particular method of doing frosting on this channel or not. I use it on my Dollhouse Miniatures channel. I've done it several times over there. And it's perfect for doing what we're doing today. These are 4 pools of TLS. And then I have 4 little tiny bits of oil paints, artist oil paints. Now you don't use oil paints directly on polymer clay, but you can mix oil paint with TLS and use that, and it doesn't take very much. There are some instructions online that do the same process with acrylic paint. I really, really, really strongly recommend you don't ever mix acrylic paint with TLS. It's recommended against doing that by the people that make TLS. And there's some real scientific reasoning for not doing it, and I'm going to go into that on the blog post. I'm not going to clutter up the video with that. So what we are going to do is we're going to color our TLS with this. So let's start out with, I have titanium white, yellow ochre, and some burnt umber. And these 3 are just from a set of cheap beginner oil paints that I got. I think they were less than $10 at a craft store many years ago, and I think I used a coupon. Then over here I have some rose madder. One color I have trouble finding in oil paint that stays the color I wanted is red. Many reds will shift to an orange or a peach. This one doesn't. This is one that plays really nicely. So we've got our paint. I've just got a little bit of paint on the end of my toothpick, and I'm going to mix it into my TLS. And you saw how little that was, and it will look a lot lighter in the raw state than it will once it is baked, because remember our TLS is going to go more clear. I am going to add just a tiniest touch more. But you don't want to put too much in, then it won't cure correctly. So the hardest one to do is the white, because white, it's hard to tell when you've got white mixed in thoroughly, because white into white, it's a lot more challenging. I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up better or worse than it is in person. Now, because I want to turn that long one into a maple bar, I need a maple frosting. For a maple frosting, I want just a touch of the yellow, of the burnt umber, and then some yellow ochre. Yellow ochre by itself is just a little too light, and I don't want it to look like chocolate. That's a good color. Now this last one I want to make pink. For pink I want just a little bit of white, and I just want to touch that rose madder. It doesn't take much red. I think I am going to get a little more white and just a tiny bit more red. That's a better color. Now if you have, I'm going to put a little more TLS in there because I feel like I've got a little too much paint for the amount of TLS I have in this pool. I don't measure, I go by look and how it feels against the toothpick, which just comes, you'll get that with experience. All right, now to eliminate as much mess as possible, I'm going to fold this foil down, because I know the next thing I'll do is stick my finger into that oil paint if I don't. Now I have my paper plate set up with a piece of baking parchment on it. So let's start with this guy. Whenever I'm using TLS in any form, I like to bake on parchment because TLS would just glue, if it drips down onto the paper plate, it will just glue right to it. And we don't want that. Now, I like this because it has a nice, it drips like real icing does, which I'm not sure how well I'm going to be able to show on the video, but I will have photos on the blog post. Be sure and check the blog post for photos, for information. I always list the colors. I list a lot more detail about what I used. A lot of times I'll give you the reasons why I did something. A lot of things that are not explained in the video are explained in the blog post. I don't want the video to get too horribly long. All right, so that's going to go to my baking surface. Let's do one with chocolate. Normally I would pick these up to do them, but I'm trying to keep them on the tray, so I think it's easier for you guys to see, but it's hard for me to remember. I just automatically pick it up. Could have used a little more icing. That's okay. I still have quite a bit on my toothpick, which I can. The nice thing about this icing is you can drizzle with this too if you want, if you've got something that you want to do a drizzle on. All right, let's do a pink one. Move it. You can see how it just has a wonderful texture. Now for this, I would not recommend using the Kato clay, although it will work. It is such a translucent liquid polymer clay that it won't, you would be able to see through. That's why we have a couple of, I know we've done the same project or type of thing, because we did the gummy bears on here, and those were the liquid Kato clay with oil paint. So we have done it a little bit. I want to get a little bit of dripping going down off of the top of my, use your toothpick and kind of encourage any drips that you might want, things like that. All right, put this over here. Now, let's get the white one, and then I'm going to add something to the top of this. Now, this one, now, what I have here are some no-hole glass micro beads. And these come in so many colors, and they make wonderful decorations for our doll-size food. So I am going to bake these now at the recommended temperature for a full 10 minutes, and once they are baked and cooled, we'll come back and we'll look at our finished donuts. All right, here are our donuts out of the oven, and they're starting to cool. I love the sheen that the TLS with oil paint gets. It is so pretty and it looks so realistic. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Be sure and check the blog post for more photos, more information, and my thoughts and stuff over there. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Leave me a comment. Are there foods or other projects you'd like to see me do tutorials on the channel? Let me know what you want to see. If you enjoy my content and you haven't subscribed, I really would love it if you'd push that subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. If you watched all the way through the video, thank you. I appreciate you being here and listening to me, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.